Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Hi, I'm Larry.
I am Cyndi.
I'm Renny.
And I'm Josh. And unfortunately, Professor Hartman was not able to make it to the session in person, but we were able to get her to phone in. She's only the second person to ever phone in.
Thanks to the wonders of technology, we have her with us.
And you feeling okay today?
Yes.
Already. You are being held up by a particular beverage. Would you like to guess what kind of beverage it is? Just like with Jessie, we had a bottle of wine sitting in for her one time.
I'm supposed to guess what?
What kind of beverage is sitting in your seat and holding up the phone?
Oh, no idea. I'm going to guess Coca-Cola.
You're close. You're very close. I'll give you
Pepsi.
No.
Oh, that's further away.
One more guess.
I don't even know anything else.
The correct answer is Stewart's root beer.
Oh, Stewart's root beer. Yes, I am a Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
My middle name is Stewart.
How about that?
We don't have anything to do with root beer, though, unfortunately.
Okay. No connections or investments in the root beer chain?
That's right.
No, we're not related to the root beer chain at all.
Okay.
And the one here that used to be on Fisher Boulevard at Route 37 has been closed and gone for years. There's still one on 30 in not Hamilton, but just outside Hamilton. So it still exists.
There's still one in Seaside as well. There's one.
There's one in Tuckerton.
Yeah, Tuckerton.
Tuckerton as
There
well.
could be one in Seaside, I don't know.
Yeah, there is. On 35, there's one.
And then Tuckerton, there's one off of Route 9. Or
Okay.
on Route 9, I'm sorry. But today we're going to be going over the book/novel that Professor Hartman selected, and we made sure that she would not miss. And that is a discussion about Passage to India by E.M. Forster. Do you have a discussion starter?
Yes, I'll say, are we today really concerned about colonialism as the novel is?
Interesting question, because it's not the hotspot issue the way that it was over 100 years ago. But I think that people are more so concerned about spreading their ideas and making other people think and having influence over the way that they do think, be it with religion or with politics or with points of view. I don't see as much as far as physically invading countries, even though, on the other hand, I come to think about everybody's always after Israel.
Yes, well, that's an issue. And this, my suggestion came about because I actually saw the David Lean 1984 movie on TMC with no commercials. I didn't know it existed. It starred Judy Davis as Bella and was quite excellent. I read the novel in novel class in college, and that's like 60 years ago. So I went back to see it again, and this time we were looking at it then simply by like history. But now, especially because of the election, racism is a hot topic in the United States. I wish it would disappear in my lifetime, but seems to always get worse. And certainly Passage to India shows the terrible attitude the British had towards the native people that they had seized.
Yeah, I was amazed by that when I was reading it. It reminded me so much of our own prejudices and our own struggles with racism. And
Yes.
I was astounded. And I never think of it for India.
There was that period of time, though, when the Western world was trying to make its way into India and into the East. And invade it and try and influence it.
I'll say this: there were some positives. India was broken up into many different principalities and kingdoms, and one thing the British Raj did was unite India. However, when it did so, it also united the idea that India could free itself, and did in 1947, 1948, about the time Israel was created. And they don't have this in the book, but I know they used to call people like Dr. Aziz wogs. It meant wary, Oriental gentleman, W-O-N-G. That was their name. That was like an N-word.
I think that Aziz was somebody that I kind of had I don't know if I would say I liked him, but I thought he was somebody that was put in an unfortunate situation by these people that were very frivolous and
Yes,
self-absorbed.
he's an actual physician, and he's just trying to better himself a little bit, and he doesn't want to feel like many of the Indians do, that they should have nothing to do with. I think my phone went off.
No, you're with us.
We can hear you, but we
another number.
can hear you, but we
Anyway,
can't see you.
He's trying to make things even between the West and the East, and the British have no interest in that whatsoever.
Yeah, I like the character of Aziz. I think is one of the better characters that I've read. He's very well rounded. Very you get to see many different aspects of him. He's very multidimensional.
Yes, he is, and he's a very true character who, as Josh said, gets himself into an idiot situation that he really doesn't have anything to do with. He is supposedly in a cave with Abella, but he is not there. She may hear him as an echo. Actually, what happens there is not spelled out in the novel. You just have to kind of guess. However, we know she's complicated in a way. She wants to be a young, free woman. She does have the engagement broken, but there's a couple things. Just before she goes to the caves, she goes out walking alone by herself in the woods. I can't believe that was any woods where she was, but she's in a major city. However, she comes across some statues and maybe relics, maybe a fallen down temple. She's really interested, and then she looks, and behind her, coming up the same way, are some Hindu men. And she just gets hysterical and runs blindly back to her safety. So I guess we get a hint that maybe we can't trust her as a character before she ends up accusing Dr. Aziz of rape.
Yeah. And then we also have, just before that incident, Mrs. Moore in another cave, where she thinks that she's being molested for a moment until she discovers that it was a woman with her baby that rubbed up against her. She thought it was something else, we'll say.
The part with, but I think Adela has even said that she was making these accusations without enough evidence.
Yes.
And she
ends up recanting when they get to the trial.
Yes.
I don't think she knows exactly what she's doing. She falls back into the delicate woman, the woman who gets the vapors, has to spend her life in bed. She isn't like that at the very beginning, and I think when she first gets to India, but then she goes back and relies on that kind of stereotype when she has whatever incident happened. I think she just heard echoes, and they made her upset. She couldn't understand what they were. She couldn't figure out what it was, and she just got hysterical. After all, hysterical comes from the Greek word for womb, and that's kind of what she does a couple times.
She's very indecisive throughout the book. She's breaking up the engagement, and then she's going back on that, and then deciding that she never loved him in the first place.
She also has this sense of entitlement too, that she thinks that there's no consequences to her decisions.
Yes, definitely.
But
well, probably all the British there kind of think that way. Although there is some difference. Fielding and Aziz try friendship. Doesn't kind of work out, but that's a little bit better of an instance. Her problem is, in this case, being a young, unmarried woman in a foreign place who doesn't really have much of an experience of any kind. And so her reactions are strange. They are not what we would say the way most people would react to say something like, well, I'm upset about this because I don't understand it. She just gets crazy.
One of the things that I noticed with this book is that I personally was not the hugest fan of A Passage to India. It was a very dense and pretentious book. But I thought that these were good characters that had potential, but it just didn't seem like they had the right written execution. Because to me, in all honesty, it felt like there was always I was interacting with a glass wall when reading this book.
Okay, I can see that. It comes early. It comes in the 20s. And I read, in looking it up again, that it's considered one of the 100 best novels of the 20th century. I don't know if I would agree with that. I just became really interested in it again because I had seen a good adaptation. There's many characters in the book. There might be too many characters in the book. They're not, of course, in the movie.
A lot of characters, and they're very they throw them into the plot interchangeably very rapidly. It's not like I don't feel like we get. I think if we concentrated on Dr. Z's for a period of time, allowed him to flesh out, we get a halfway decent background. But we go from one scene to the next scene to the next scene to the next scene. It's rather than we concentrate on a certain area, and then we do something, then we go into another. I think
one of Forster's reasons is he had been to India himself, and he was one of the liberals in Britain at the time. And this was very early because most of the liberations don't come till the 60s and 70s. But he did see that the empire may not have been working as well as everybody was thinking, and that India should be independent and free itself. I think he was trying to show maybe India as a character in some ways, rather than just all the individual people. Yes, you'll have a party in it, and you get a dozen names, and some of them they're never going to occur again. So you have no relationship to them as characters at all.
Yes, it seems like in the beginning especially it's very frenetic, but it does, I think, settle in, and a strong narrative does take place throughout the majority of the book. The only other time where you really have that kind of frenetic energy, I think, other than, say, up until the, just past the bridge party when Fielding and Mrs. Moore and, was it Adela and Aziz and the medicine man, when they all have the, that dinner together, just them.
Yes.
I would say from that point until the trial, it's kind of settles in, and there's like a normal kind of story. And then at the trial, again, we have this onrush of characters that are very, like, revolving door style, kind of in and out of the narrative. But in that case, I feel like they all play an important part. Whereas in the beginning, I think it's more frenetic, and it might be, similar to going to a place like India for the first time, where at first, you can't really adjust to how different everything is, and and you can't keep track of it. But then you kind of ease into it. But then at the trial, when things become frenetic again, I think that's just like trying to capture, the idea of justice, where, it's hanging by a thread, right? Like where the concept of justice is being kind of attacked on all sides by different forces, like the racism and the resentment between the Indians and the English, and the racism of the English toward but still there's got to be that thread of justice that does come out of it. So I feel like I don't know, I would defend this book and say that it really did capture what it would be like to go to India as as a visitor.
You know what I thought of when I thought of the description of geography? Spending a whole chapter devoted to concentrating on setting.
Yeah, I think that was part of his. He wants you to see India panoramically, sort of.
Yeah.
The way he saw when he was first there, so you get a taste of that.
I thought of John Steinbeck when I was reading that,
Yes,
because
Steinbeck does that too for California.
I see that in East of Eden, especially.
Yes.
He does cover it in The Grapes of Wrath, but I personally think that Steinbeck does it better.
Yeah.
Well,
But
Steinbeck's later and closest to us in our age. Forster is, I would say, practically Edwardian. Of course, Edward is no longer King of England, but he comes out of that time, post-Victorian England, and he is, I think, much more modern in a sense for his time in the 20s, and we see that now as archaic. But yes, I really do think he's trying to show, even with the trial, colonialism brought order and medicine and law and order itself, but it was British law and order. I think that his comment of the trial is that it was out of time and out of place in India because it was not Indian, it was British. That gives us a different look. The one thing that is interesting too, that in some of these places, the British would be in their own roped off area, and there would be practically no back and forth with native people at all. I have to say, at least here, there is some mix among the, I would say, upper class Indians and the British. So they're not entirely isolated from one another. But it is still the British imposition.
I think, first off, it's worth noting that Forster actually outlived Steinbeck by quite a few years.
I don't know if he was writing later or not.
Forster was older.
Steinbeck is very modern to us because he comes out of practically, post World War II.
Maurice was released in the 70s, but it was written much earlier because it was very
it's his first
controversial for its time.
Yeah, Maurice is his first novel, from what I read. But yeah, it wasn't published until he died.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I could definitely see them as being contemporaries. But England, is different than the United States, so I think there's probably a lot of difference there. But I found the work to be very modern. I thought Aziz, the way he was written, was really brilliant. I mean, I'm hard pressed to find a better written character.
I think.
Well, I have to say, going back to the novel, having read it many years ago, I really found it a good read and very delightful, and certainly worth being in the, say, top 100 books of the 20th century. And I can't say I always felt that way when I have reread some of the books from before. Sometimes I like them better, and oddly, the other times I say, oh my God, I don't like this at all. But I have to say, Passage of India with me stood up very, very well. I would recommend it to anyone.
I did read that it's in the family of books such as Heart of Darkness, which I could say would attest to that. I don't know anything about Kim by Rudyard Kipling, but they did compare it to that.
I don't really know either, but I know Heart of Darkness, yes.
Mm-hmm. I remember in...
because of their settings, they're in different... Kim is probably in Africa.
I remember, Britlet 2, I remember we had a debate as to whether or not they should teach or not teach Heart of Darkness in all classrooms. As far as this, I would not, at the moment, I would not vouch to have Passage to India taught. I'd really have to look more into the subject matter and whether or not it would fit. But I mean, I'm more inclined to read Maurice by E.M. Forster. And I think it's Room with a View is Forster?
Yes.
Okay, because Room with One's Own is Wolfe.
Yeah, so Room with a View is Forster, which I haven't read. This is my introduction to Forster.
Me too.
I was impressed. I was really impressed.
I mean, I wouldn't dismiss him, but I think that if there was more, organization and concentration, because it kind of reminded me. There was a kind of like there was a manager that Cyndi and I used to have that would start a conversation with you, and when you tried to reply or give some kind of feedback, they'd just walk away from you.
But I see that in the beginning, but I really think that it does.
I will agree that it does start to pan out. I think that it gets better as it goes on.
Yeah.
But I still think that there's this rapid. It's just rapid.
Yeah.
No, I think it's an excellent novel, and we can't disparage him as a novelist. There aren't that many that do that well over a long period of time. I don't know if it would be taught today in the same way. When I had novels, we did a novel a week, and we did things like Tom Jones is as thick as my fist, in a week. So that actually Passage to India was relatively short, considering. And exactly how we talked about it today, I cannot tell you. It's probably not the same thing. It would be, I was in college before the 1964 Civil Rights Movement, so I don't think that we were probably too interested in some of the subject matter in it that we are today, in a way. We would probably be interested in the manners, because of British manners and etiquette and those kinds of things that were crossed over into India. The Indians did adopt many of those things, but they did not arise out of India or Indian tradition. So I don't know how today. Yes, we would certainly teach it on the racism scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the politics of it aside, when I read a book, I want to see if it's getting at something real and true, and I think that this book succeeds there. Where again the characters are very well developed, especially Aziz Fielding too. Although it's a little bit, I think, on the nose that Forster himself being, an atheist homosexual would make the atheist as the most relatable character in a way, like where he's the one that's going to reach out and try to be a friend to the English people. I think that might be a little bit too on the nose, so to speak. But otherwise, that would be my one complaint about it, is a little too much of the humanism and if it stayed away from that and just made Fielding like just a normal Englishman of the time, an Anglican, I would probably give it a perfect rating.
Yeah, I think, and although it's not a big book, he maybe needed more space to do it, but I think he wanted to show us as he thought India was, that would be our experience. We would be moved to some place that we were not familiar with anything at all and had to adjust. Of course, many of the British didn't adjust, they just forced their own feelings and practices on the natives.
Right.
But I think he was trying to show us that.
Yeah, the one thing that I did like was Fielding kind of teasing the other English people by using white as a political identity. Yeah. And he said, to me, white people aren't white. They're whatever he said, something like they're pink. And that really bothered everybody there because they were looking at whiteness as a true identity. But it only makes sense to have white as an identity if you're around people that aren't white, because otherwise they just be English. And English is
British, yes. It doesn't even follow the rotten Americans, the ugly American. But it is just the British. But yes, I think there's very strong emphasis on the beauty of India and their people and how this outside has invaded and it hasn't worked well. Actually, probably did work well for a while anyway, in some ways, but certainly people are entitled to their own self-determination. We certainly believe that in the UN mission statement.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else anybody wanted to bring up?
Well, I like the friendship between Fielding and Aziz, and I really liked the presentation of India as it is, even though at points it was could go on a little bit long, and it's like, where's the story? And I did feel like the minor characters were kind of lost in the sauce, but I saw them as window dressing to show you what the setting was, and and then you've got your main characters. So on the whole, I like this rather well. And as an armchair traveler, because I don't travel, I thought it was wonderful because I got to see India.
Yeah.
Yes, in some ways it is.
And there's a lot of people in India, right? There's over 1 billion people in India.
Oh, yes.
So the cast is going to have a lot of people.
Yeah, it makes sense that there'd be a lot of characters.
To Africa, where they are not native, to save them because India is expanding so much. They can't have wild animals running around too many places because there's people there now.
Yeah. True enough.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty then. Do we have any final thoughts?
No.
Well, I think the book is excellent, and it's also a pleasure to read, and I certainly liked some of the characters. I thought if you wanted a bigger picture, like, say, the Russian Revolution and Dr. Zhivago, he needed to expand more. But he wants to focus on this one idea of the strangeness, and so that's what he did.
Yeah, and the central theme, right, is about whether or not it's possible for a colonizer to have a friendship with a member of the people being colonized, and
yes,
yeah, and that doesn't pan out in Forster's view. So but it was a beautiful effort though, and like I said, I really like the character of Aziz. So I would also recommend this book to people.
Alrighty, how would we rate this? 0 to 5 stars, half stars permitted, Larry?
I'm going to go 4 stars because of the fact that, like I said, I really love the book, but I am going to omit 1 star because there is a little eye rolling that goes on from me because of the kind of praising of atheism and humanism that goes on, and kind of the shots taken at Christianity that I don't appreciate. So I remove a star.
Alrighty.
I should give it 4 stars.
Okay.
I'll give it 4.5. It's not perfect. It's not a 5, but it's very, very strong.
I'm going 2.5 because I think that I think that this is something that could have, for me, it could have been it was something that could be very engaging, and I think to some people, they did see it as engaging. To that generation, maybe it did. I don't think that it really stood the test of time not in the content sense, but in the technique. I think that it would have been better if there was more concentration on fleshing out characters a bit better. I think that
focusing on the 7 mains.
Concentrate. I mean, the supporting. It's okay to have supporting characters, especially. I think that, like, Stephen King's Salem's Lot did a fantastic job with incorporating supporting characters, but yet we still had the best idea, and we still had a great idea, the supporting cast, but the greatest concentration was on the main story. So if we had a stronger sense of, I mean, granted, India probably was a strong, but even still, I didn't feel that. I mean, it wasn't like Kew Gardens, where the garden was the character. I don't think it had that identity as to. It wasn't really able to identify who is the main character. Maybe there was Aziz was, I think, viewed as, because I think when you look at the character list, he's often at the top.
I would say Aziz was definitely the main character.
Yes, okay. But I think that I don't feel that he was properly introduced. I mean, his very first scene, he comes into the. He goes into somebody's house, and the person that he was looking to see had just died. Right. And he just died right now, kind of thing, or just a few minutes ago, and it just goes right on to the next thing. I wish that it was more. I wish that we were able to. It's like hopping on a treadmill that's already going 3 times the speed that you're looking to go.
As it would be if you landed in India right now, knowing next to nothing about it.
Yes. I mean, that could be that would be, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's intentional.
Disease especially is related to the incident in the Marabou caves and going into the trial. I don't see how you could say Aziz is not developed.
Yeah. I think that Aziz is a good character, but I think that all the characters in here are victims of a scatterbrain backdrop, if you know what I mean.
As if the story is plot driven and not character driven.
Kind of. There's a lot of it's multiple plot driven. It's like traffic plot driven. It's like a plot full of traffic jams. rather than it kind of like the Garden State Parkway in the summer on a Friday afternoon.
There is a lot going on. I mean, we didn't even talk about Ronnie.
You could be entitled to your own opinion, but you know that it is considered one of the best novels of the 20th century by big academics and critics. So whatever.
I'm not a lot of academics or critics.
Josh is an outlier here.
I'm an outlier. Yeah.
But I mean, we didn't even talk about Ronnie at all. It just dawned on me. Poor Ronnie got no mention at all. And to me, he's somewhat sympathetic as well in all this, having to deal with this woman who's constantly changing her mind, as well as having to deal with the position that he's in as someone who's supposed to keep the peace among these people that do not share a culture or a heritage. And it would be very difficult to establish relationships if that was the position that you were in. I just wanted to say that I thought Ronnie was an interesting character as well. Yeah.
When after the trial, Ronnie
right.
and Adele, he pushed he ended things with Adela.
Yeah.
Because of but I think that he made the right decision, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. Well, she almost caused a revolution. Maybe, and she was completely wrong to do so. You know, she wasn't aware of the facts of her own life. So, yeah. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to rekindle things when we were wrapping up there. But yeah,
don't worry about it.
I like that character, you know, and I wanted to mention him before.
There's things that there's things that we don't bring up or pay as much attention to, but that's the way. That's a postmodern book club. It's not. People are going to approach everything differently. You don't always get to cover everything you want.
Yeah, and it kind of speaks to your point about the story kind of not having a constant narrative throughout, right? It's like, oh, well, here's this character, and he was a main character, and he's barely... You could have a whole discussion about this book and not even talk about him. So, there is that aspect.
Alrighty then. If you are interested in reading A Passage to India, here is my copy. I got this from Second Time Books in Mount Laurel. And I got this in... I knew we were going over it in our season, so the fact that it popped up was perfect, because it was $6. But I want to thank you for tuning in to our discussion, and I hope you check out some more videos from our channel. Be sure to join us next time on another episode of The Glory Gladiators. For now, keep reading.